Good morning, everyone. Today I'll be presenting our work entitled Building Pattern Typification. The use of spatial data is increasing. Nowadays, we see the rise of various spatial services which provide itinerary calculation, transport, traffic, and intelligent transport systems. All those services use maps. So map production became a key domain to pour our conscious effort into. The new tools of data acquisition became so accurate that they allow the production of high-precision databases up to tenths of centimeters, but the used maps can have a smaller scale. Example for an urban map of 1 to 25,000 and a road map of 1 to 500,000, and some softwares offer scales even smaller. Zooming out is not enough to produce a small-scale map, because problems can appear in the map, cartographic conflicts, like coalescence, overlapping, imperceptibility, map cluttering, etc. That's why we use, instead of that, the generalization. The cartographic generalization consists of multiple operations, which are simplification, which reduces the vertex of a shape, the selection, which selects the object to be represented in the final map and omit the rest, the typification that keeps the impression of the population of a group but reduces its number, the aggregation, which replaces a group of objects by only one but represents the land extent of the group, and many other operations as smoothing, displacement, enlargement, etc. We are interested in building typification, but buildings can have particular positionings, like alignment, grid, circle, or just facing each other in symmetrical manner. In this case, we talk about patterns of building. When the structure is more complex, when we have patterns positioned in pattern, we talk then of patterns of pattern. We worked on this latter, but our method can be applied easily to the building patterns. The presentation takes the form of the following outlines. First, we are going to see the method. Then we are going to talk about the preprocessing. After that, we will see the distribution detection method, and finally we will talk about the results. The method consists in 5 steps. The preprocessing, which allows us to detect the building patterns. After we aggregate our pattern occurrences in concave envelopes. After we detect the distribution of our envelopes, then we select and position our envelopes accordingly to their distribution, and finally we simplify the buildings. First of all, in the preprocessing step, we begin by cutting our extent area using the road and street network to obtain blocks. Then for each block, we compute the buildings contained in its area. So we have buildings distributed in blocks. After we use our method presented in a previous work, presented in the last CAGJ 2019, to detect our patterns. Then we compute the concave envelope, but it's possible to use another aggregating shape such as convex hull, bounding box, etc. We then detect the distribution of our envelopes. For the linear pattern, we project the centroid of our envelopes in the nearest segment of the nearest road. This method also allows us to order our envelopes along the road. For the green pattern, we compute the oriented bounding rectangle of our group of envelopes. Then we sweep the rectangle to the center by decreasing its shape. We construct as we go along an array representing the grid. Or else it's an unstructured pattern. For the linear pattern, it's as follows. Having n shapes in the original group and we want to keep m shapes in the resulting group, we compute the m locations of the future buildings using Laghouat 1998 method. Then we select the m nearest shapes to the locations to be represented in the final result. Here we can see the distribution with different values of m. For the grid pattern, the dilation must be by an entire line or a column, and in the sense of the elongation of the group to keep the characteristics of the grid. For the unstructured pattern, we select using a cost function. This function is based on the surface and the number of neighbors and their proximities. Then two displacements are computed. For the first one, if the shape has n neighbors that have been deleted, its new location is the average between its location and the location of its n deleted neighbors. The second displacement is used to correct a possible overlapping. In the end, the buildings are simplified using one of the following algorithms depending on its surface: an amplification, a convex hull, an oriented bounding box, Douglas and Pucker simplification, and Wiesbalingham simplification. The method was tested on samples from cities in Algeria under PyQGIS language. Here are some of the results. The values between the original groups and the resulting groups were compared. We first have the land extent calculated by the surface of the convex hull. The value given is the ratio between the original value and the resulting value. We notice that the values are close since they are all close to 1. The extent is therefore preserved. The shape is obtained by the ratio of the area of the building and its convex hull. We notice that the value of this ratio between the two compared is approximately the same. The results obtained on the other samples are also conclusive. This study aimed to propose the method of typifying the building patterns. We have seen that there are different types of buildings patterns and that each requires a particular type of typification. The results obtained on linear, grid, and unstructured patterns were evaluated, and the values showed that the typification preserved the land extent and the shape of the groups of buildings. The automatic generalization is a young field. However, most of the tools are not available in the accessible GIS tools. The implementation took up a large part of the project. Thus, we had to limit the application to certain patterns. For future applications, we intend to add other type of patterns and eventually to introduce a shape recognition method. Thank you for your attention.